I move to suspend the rules and pass S4052, the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Act of 2022.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 4052, an act to reauthorize a program for early detection, diagnosis, and treatment regarding deaf and hard of hearing newborns, infants, and young children, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, and the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Joyce, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on S4052.
Action.
And, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman has the floor.
Today I rise in support of S4052, the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Act. Last year we passed the House version of this bill, H.R. 5561, which was sponsored by Health Subcommittee Ranking Member Guthrie and Representative Matsui, and I want to thank both of them for their leadership on this issue. Over the last 20 years, Mr. Speaker, we've been very successful in addressing one of the most common birth defects affecting America's children, congenital hearing loss. Children with this condition are born with hearing loss and are at risk for delays in speech, language, social, and emotional development. Fortunately, early detection and intervention is highly effective in preventing these adverse effects. Since 2000, Congress has passed and subsequently reauthorized early hearing detection and intervention programs, also known as EHDI programs. These programs support state and territory programs and systems of care to identify and support children who are deaf or hard of hearing. Thanks to these programs, early hearing loss screening, diagnosis, and treatment services have greatly increased over the last 2 decades. Now consider that before 1993, only 1 in 10 newborns were screened for hearing loss. Today, according to data from the Centers for Disease and Prevention, 90% of all infants are screened within the first month of their lives. Furthermore, 60% of infants receive audiological evaluations and diagnosis by 3 months of age, and 72% of infants were enrolled in early intervention services before they are 6 months old. These are remarkable achievements that help ensure all children with hearing loss have the same opportunities as children who can hear. So today we're considering a bill that will help us build on these achievements. S4052, the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Act, would extend critical funding for EHDI programs for 5 years through fiscal year 2027. This legislation will ensure that these services continue to be available for children that are deaf or hard of hearing. And Mr. Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of S4052, the Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Act, the companion legislation to H.R. 5561, sponsored by Energy and Commerce Committee members Representatives Guthrie and Matsui. S4052 is very similar to the legislation that passed the House 410 to 17, and I hope in the upcoming vote it will receive even more yes votes. Hearing loss in children continues to be all too prevalent in the United States. According to recent CDC data, almost 15% of children aged 6 to 19 experience low or high-frequency hearing loss in one or both ears. The Early Hearing Detection and Intervention Program, administered through the CDC and the Health Resources and Services Agency, has helped providers to quickly identify babies and young children who are born deaf or hard of hearing, which has led to improved health outcomes and brought hope to so many families. S4052 reauthorizes federal support for these important statewide programs that help early detection, diagnosis, and treatment of deaf and hard of hearing newborns, infants, and young children through 2027. This bill will help redouble our efforts to truly open the world of communication to children who experience hearing loss. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Pennsylvania reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no additional speakers. I don't know if you're prepared to close.
We're prepared.
Okay, the gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
We reserve the balance of our time. We yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The
thank
gentleman from New Jersey is on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would urge all members to vote for this on a bipartisan basis and mention that if it passes, or when it passes today, that it will go to the President's desk. So I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass Senate 4052? Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, for what purpose